What's up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another episode of Nothing's Off the Table. I'm your host, Andy, and what we are bringing you today is another episode. It's another replay or reproduction, if you will, from our older podcast, Throwing Down with Danny and Ricardo. In this episode, it's featuring a retired Air Force Pararescueman, or PJs are also known as, and his name's Brent, and we're going to keep it at Brent for his protection and protection of his family. It's a very interesting interview. Brent's a super cool dude, and we're happy to bring it to you. Now, the auto recording on this one was a little bit better. Again, still playing, still learning, still growing, but definitely better than with the interview with Nate, although the interview with Nate was great. Anyway, enough of my talking. You guys know what to do. Grab your snack, grab your drink, grab your honey, and kick back and take a listen to the show.
You're listening to Nothing's Off the Table, the podcast where nothing, well, almost nothing, is too taboo to discuss. On Nothing's Off the Table, we give everyone and everyone a say. We may not agree with or even like the topic, but we're happy to give you a voice, listen to your perspective, and maybe offer our own. Nothing's Off the Table is a Madsis Productions podcast. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on iTunes.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, unfortunately, we don't have Ricardo with us, but that's all right. What we do have is a special guest, and again, I always say our guests are special, but truly, this guest is very special in more ways than one, but we'll leave that one alone. Anyway, Brent is joining us. Brent is a retired U.S. Air Force PJ, or Pararescueman, and not only did he have that under his belt, but he's also a former reconnaissance corpsman. So, Brent, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks, Andy. Glad to be here.
So, we kind of talked a little bit prior to recording, and I've had several folks ask to do a show like this, specifically with a PJ. So, do you want to give us a little bit of background? Of course, you started out as a corpsman, and how many years total did you do in both services?
Total combined was a little over 25 years, 10 years as a corpsman and 15 years as a PJ.
Holy smokes, dude. So, number one, thank you for your service. That's a long time. And I know a little bit of something about that, since how I've got a little over 28 in myself. But
yeah,
trying to make it to 30, brother. Trying hard. It's getting harder and harder every day. But you did the recon thing. When did you, I don't know if many of our listeners, with regards to the PJs, know much about reconnaissance corpsmen. So can you give us a quick down and dirty about what your main responsibilities were?
Well, it's changed a lot over the years, especially initially. They have a great pipeline now that produces some really good corpsmen, some really good amphibious reconnaissance corpsmen. But it depends on your level as a corpsman, but your responsibilities are, all you go with, whether it be at the time it was a battalion recon or a force reconnaissance team. Now it's a MARSOC, could be a MARSOC, and another reconnaissance battalion. Of course, they stood up force again. Mm-hmm. But your responsibilities, and especially initially, after you finish their 2-year pipeline, is becoming a platoon or a troop corpsman, and you take care of the guys in your troop and your platoon medically. You're also a tactical capability for that. You're very diverse. You have the ability to, like everybody always says, shoot, move, and communicate. You're a tactical asset on that team, and when needed and called upon, you use your medical capabilities when they're needed, but you also do some planning. There's a lot of planning in there for the guys, for your teams and platoons and where you're going to. So they're I want to say entry level, as in you just got out of the pipeline, you're just starting off. That's where a guy should definitely go. It's great for a young guy. It was great for myself and some other folks, and it was awesome. Then you start leading into getting older, and more rank and such, and then you start taking over companies, but you're still useful, and you start getting more into that planning and preparation and taking care of the guys underneath you, and then of course on in later on into areas that, you know, some of the guys that you and I both know, Mike and those folks, and then you get into the Master Chief, Senior Chief, Master Chief realm, and you're in strategic planning and all kinds of things. But you can still be operational. I know Mike did,
right,
at that level.
So
you're always still an asset.
So those that are listening, Mike is if you're wondering who Mike is, go back a couple episodes, and Mike is the retired reconnaissance corpsman, Master Chief, and we did a podcast with him, I don't know, about a year and a half ago. But anyway, I don't mean to cut you off, but just so folks know who we're talking about, basically.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, it was a great job, great 10 years I did over there, and I didn't start out there. I started out in the infantry, 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines, as a Quad 08404 corpsman, and went to the 1st Gulf War with the 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines Indian Company, 1st Platoon, and then I went over and took an NDOC. So that was kind of my career path.
A little bit of history. So that was 9th Marines before they were disbanded and restood back up.
That's correct. Yeah, because they did shut down and went to 4th Marines, and then went back to 9th Marines, and went back to 4th Marines again. That's true.
Damn, dude, you're old.
Yeah. Feeling it. That's for sure.
I bet. So then you did the recon thing for a little bit, and then an interesting thing happened. You got you were in Alaska training, right?
Yeah, you know what's funny is so I was up in Alaska, and I was going to a couple of courses up in Bridgeport, California. One of them was a cold weather medicine course. The other one was a cold weather survival. And a couple of guys were up there in the training with me, and they were PJs. They have a PJ guard unit up there. Those guys get to do a lot of stuff. They're doing McKinley rescues and rescues all over Alaska, high altitude and cold weather specialists for sure. But it's a guard unit up there. But the PJs that I had with me were out of Florida, and one of them was a former Marine. His name was Hiram Resto. Hiram's a great guy. He's retired now, also retired PJ. But so he was in Alaska with me, and these guys were in Alaska with me, in Bridgeport, California with me. And we're running around and we're training, and so they got recalled, and this is in '98. They got recalled to go to Bosnia. So, at the time there was no cell phones.
Right.
So I said, and Hiram's like, yeah, we're going into Bosnia, which you know what happened in Bosnia. The PJs rescued the down pilot and did a lot of really cool stuff. And I was like, man, what am I doing here? So I called my company, Gunny, and I said, hey, Gunny, are you my platoon sergeant? I said, hey, you guys recalling me? He's like, no, Doc. What are you talking about? So I said, well, these Air Force guys, they're getting deployed to go to Bosnia. Does that mean I'm going? He goes, no, just keep going. And I'm going to jump back a little bit, because the first time I'd ran into PJs was when I was based in Okinawa, Japan at 3rd Recon Company. And I'd run into them. They were we did a little trade-off. And it just so happens I ran into a guy that I'd known, a former Marine and a former corpsman that I knew before, that became a PJ and a combat controller. So that was the first time I was actually really exposed to him until I went to Bridgeport, California. But anyway, those guys kind of told me, I didn't realize there was anything in the Air Force like that, any pararescue or any type of soft special operations forces whatsoever. That was my first time. And those guys had a really good reputation from the Marine Corps and the Navy. And I'd heard about them and knew them. So I was like, what are you guys doing over here? So that's kind of my first exposure. They have a really good, as you know, Andy, they have a really good rescue squadron and a special tactics squadron on Kadena Air Base in Okinawa.
Right.
We did some boat support, and they provided the air assets, and we did some trading. So we got the jump, got the parachute, and off their aircraft, and we did the boat support for pulling, or at least our company did the boat support for pulling parachutes and pulling guys out of the water after the jump went. So that was kind of my first working relationship and inter-service dealings, especially with Air Force Special Operations Command and the rescue community.
Yeah, that was back before there really was a big emphasis placed on, combined service ops. It's commonplace nowadays, but that was probably pretty unique.
Yeah, great experience.
So
Yeah, I didn't regret it, and I remembered it, and we did another op. We went into, they have it every year. It's Cobra Gold. It's where they come down from the Marines from Okinawa, go and do an exercise in Thailand with their forces, and that was the second time I'd ran into it, and it was a great experience. So I was like, I keep running into these guys, and I wanted to know more about it. Is basically what I wanted to do, and I didn't see myself going anywhere. I'm like, well, I could just keep climbing the ladder on the enlisted side, but I'm doing all these 6-month floats, and push come to shove, down the road, I left Okinawa, Japan, and checked into Second Force Reconnaissance Company at Camp Lejeune, and I'm running around out there, and then you might remember this, but the hurricanes hit in Lejeune. We combined into a battalion, reconnaissance company, and Force Reconnaissance, and we became a battalion, and everything. And of course, I ran into you, but we when I experienced that Bridgeport thing, and then I also had experienced Alaska, where the PJs and combat controllers from the 23rd Special Tactics in Florida attached to our recon platoons and did some training up there with us. This is kind of when I really got the feel of what their real capabilities were. And I was actually impressed by it. And of course, along the lines, I felt like I wasn't doing anything with the Marines, especially when those PJs got recalled to go to Bosnia. And here I was, a Special Amphibious Reconnaissance Corpsman, and I did not get recalled.
Right.
So I was like, hey, what's going on with this Air Force thing? So I started looking into it in 98 after I got back from there. And EAOS, I got out of the Navy in 99 with, I'd already put in a package for pararescue and believe it or not, submitted a resume and all my qualifications. And they said they couldn't legally pick me up until I'm actually out. So I took a big chance at my 10-year mark, and I got out. And then I was 3 months and 23 days later, I was in the Air Force.
Wow. And
going through their 2-year training and selection program.
That's a big gamble.
It was, yeah.
So if I remember correctly, and I'll let you get into this, but I could have sworn I was watching TV one night, and I think it was probably Discovery Channel. And there's probably something on PJs and training. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I could have sworn I saw a pretty familiar face. You know anything about
funny.
that?
I've been told I've been on that. I've never seen it myself.
Really?
I don't know what it's called, but yeah, I was told there's a couple of us, a former Marine on there, and myself on there, and it was Discovery Channel. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I wasn't sure at first, but and then I talked to a couple of folks, and everybody kind of said the same thing, that it was you. So, so you're like famous or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah, right. Excuse me. Probably better off not being famous, but
yeah, it probably caused me more problems than helped me out in my future. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So I know I know I'm going to get this question, so I'm going to get it out of the way right now. Did you ever work with Will Willis?
I was in the 2-year PJ pipeline when Will Willis was also in the 2-year PJ pipeline, but he was not in my my team.
So
after we finished the pipeline, I don't remember where he went, but I didn't work with him after that. He went to a different unit.
Well, he's Hollywood anyway, so nowadays anyway. I don't know about back then, but But yeah, so again, I cut you off. I have a bad habit of doing that. Just ask my wife; she'll tell you. But so then you signed up for the Air Force, and did you have to go through their basic training at all, or?
No, I was wavered that stuff, and there was a few other things that was of controversy at the time, and you're supposed to go through a bluing, like it's a 1 week or 2 week bluing period where you get in and they give you Air Force uniforms and teach you a little bit about the Air Force. Somehow I didn't go to that. I kind of wish I would have initially, just so I could have figured out what's going on and how it really was, because it was a lot different mentality than obviously the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I bet.
In the Navy, but I waived that. They actually flew me directly into Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I was wearing a pair of blue jeans, T-shirt, and Doc Martens. And I couldn't wear it. I didn't know how to put the Air Force uniform together. I couldn't wear the Navy uniform.
Right.
So I was running around because everywhere you go as a PJ trainee, they call you a cone. But everywhere you go, you run. You're not allowed to walk. So I'm running. It's me and a guy named CJ. We're running around in, civilian clothes on a base, running everywhere we go. In, our street clothes until we got uniforms, which were about a couple weeks down the road.
I'm sure.
So it was kind of, it was there a lot of push-ups, a lot of pull-ups, a lot of running, especially initially. It slacks up a little bit down the road, but especially when you finish.
So
yeah, I checked into Albuquerque. Now they call it PJU, or Pararescue School. Everybody goes out there now for everything. It used to be split all over the U.S. for the training. Most of it is out there now.
So you started training, and then how long is the training pipeline? You said 2 years?
It's about 2 years from beginning to end, give or take. It depends on how you class up. But most of the time, it took me, I had a lot of my stuff done already. I'd already been to Special Forces Survival School. I'd already been to Combat Dive School, Airborne School. So there was a lot of stuff I already had done. I had to wait myself to start up in classes. So in that time that you're waiting, you're doing, whether it be, they call it CQ in the Air Force, but it's basically you pulling duty, and then you're running around everywhere you go, and you're picking up, pulling weeds and, picking up trash and waiting for somebody to tell you what to do next until, you class up for the next portion of the training program.
Well, the infantry life probably sets you up perfect for that then.
Yeah, mentally it was easy.
Yeah.
It wasn't that initially. It wasn't that big a deal. I was used to getting treated badly, coming from the Marine Corps.
Right.
So, it wasn't physically. Man, I'll tell you, physically, those guys, especially in their initial part of their career, they're studs. I mean, they're great physical shape. They have a really, really good training program, selection and training program. And, that's why they have such a high attrition rate. Their attrition rate is up there. I don't know. I can't quote the percentages now, but I do know that I have a lot of friends that work down at the schoolhouse in Texas at the initial indoctrination course, the OLH, that's what it used to be called. And I know that, it's comparative to that of the SEAL pipeline and the Recon Corpsman pipeline.
So I've had some folks submit questions for me to ask you, and since we're on the training phase of it, let me ask you just one. Basically, a couple folks want to know what was your day-to-day like after the pipeline. So, what was your regular? What are you doing on a daily basis?
So, as a brand new guy, you come into a unit. You can either check into two places. You can check into a Special Tactics Squadron, or you can check into a Rescue Squadron, and that's deemed the needs of the Air Force in the career field managers who, if they have billets that they need to fill here, or they have billets they need to fill there, that kind of determines where you go. So once you go there, I didn't do time at a rescue squadron. I only did time at Special Tactics Squadrons, but A lot of my friends that came over to work with me, you can go back and forth if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
I can only really speak from and I think it's comparative, but I can only speak from the Special Tactics Squadron. So for me, I went down to Florida. It was great. I loved the area. A lot of things I wasn't used to was, the way that Air Force treats people. I mean, it's a great standard of living, quality care. Their bases are nice. And, so my day-to-day checking in was primary is physical activity. You're required to work out, run, swim. Swim is huge, amphibious type stuff. Your swimming capability, rescue in all environments, but water is huge. So there's always a pool around you somewhere. So it's if it's not an organized PT, which a lot of times it's not, you're required to kind of look outside the box instead of be inside the box.
Right.
So they put a lot of faith on you and integrity that, hey, this guy, he finished the pipeline. He knows he needs to go work out, PT, they call it PT, physical training. And almost all the guys do, especially initially.
Right.
So your initial day, you start out, you go work out. Sometimes they will have an initial muster, if you want to call it that, formation, but not always. And you rely on the people above you for setting up your training program, and that's the guys that are mid-level NCOs, senior airmen and mid-level NCOs that've been around a little while, and then senior NCOs. So those folks kind of guide your training. Hey, well, what does this guy need? So the Navy has like what they call a PQS, Personal Qualification Standard. The Air Force has the same thing, but it's listed under, it's a CFETP. It's like the Career Field Education and Training Plan. It's almost like a Navy PQS. So they have different levels. So when I finish the pipeline as and I become an actual PJ, I'm a 3 level. When I'm in training, I'm a 1 level. When I finish the PJ pipeline, I'm actually a PJ. I'm a 3 level. So they have 7 level and 5, 7, and 9 levels that you have to get to. So your whole goal and your whole goal of your supervisor is to get you up to the speed that you need to be to get signed off, and you have to earn this. These are tasks that are required of you to become a 5 level. So I was set up in a training program for a couple of great guys, and then my senior NCO his name was Gavin. But a lot of them they set you up, put you in a program, get you going. You start doing all these tasks, and sometimes you just can't get them right away. Everything from water jumps to land jumps to you have ATVs, motorcycles. There's a lot of stuff in there. Your medical skills, of course. Everybody's a paramedic, a minimum of a civilian paramedic. So you have all those skill sets, those medals, if you want to call them, mission essential task listings that are required of you. And they set you up pretty good, man. They have a really good program. I heard that the rescue squadrons, even though I wasn't there, my buddies, I was the only one out of my class of 10 that actually went to a special tactics. The other 9 guys went to a rescue squadron, which they were split between Vegas and Moody Air Force Base in Georgia.
So how many people started?
I still do.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I talk to those guys all the time, and I still do, even later on down the road. And their training was comparative. It was more geared towards rescue side, being more on a helicopter than what mine was. But I was still required to get that kind of stuff signed off. So if I was short on some things, they were able to send me up to one of those units, and I actually did that. I went to Vegas, to the rescue squadron in Vegas, and got some of my helicopter stuff signed off when I was at the Special Tactics Unit in Florida. So yeah, the day is great. I mean, man, somebody else, I wish I could go back to those days. Now I have to, even, before I retired, and even now I have to plan everything for everybody else. But that's part of getting older and gaining rank and in theory, wisdom. But if I could go back there now, let somebody else set up all my training and just go out and have fun all day, that'd be great. That'd be the perfect world.
So you were in E5 when you left the Navy, right?
I was.
And did you have to take a cut in rank to join the Air Force, or?
I did. I just tested for first class, but I'd gotten out. So if I would have made first class, it wouldn't have mattered. They didn't keep my time in rank. So I did go over as a E5 as a sergeant, but I did not keep my time in rank. I started back over at 0.
Oh, that sucks. Well, at least you kept E5 though.
Yeah, and part of it was good. Sometimes you have some guys that come over and they'll come over as an E6 and they're required to do things that they may not necessarily need to be doing because they don't have the experience of that service. So it takes them a little while. Some will, go quickly, and some will take them a little bit longer. But actually, it wasn't bad for me. I was glad I was still there. I was able to still pick stuff up, learn stuff, and a lot of things weren't expected of me because I wasn't a higher rank, which would have been difficult because I didn't know them. So It's better to start out as a lower and build yourself up to learn what their culture, their training, and learn what you're there for.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if I could do it, man. Well, especially at this point, I'm so institutionalized at this point. But so can you give us a little bit more explanation between the differences between the rescue and the tactics? I think the rescue is fairly obvious, but I don't know if a lot of folks know about the special tactics side of the house.
Yeah, so the special tactics side of the house falls under Air Force Special Operations Command, and it's a combination. It used to be just combat controllers and pararescuemen that would go into these units and teams, and they would conduct combat search and rescue in obviously austere environments, just like a regular rescue unit would do. But they would also attach to specialized teams like Special Forces teams and SEAL teams, and obviously the Marine Recon teams with MARSOC now. And I don't know if they're still doing that with, or if they're doing that at all with MARSOC, but I just know that they do with the Special Forces teams and SEAL teams still. That's kind of their mission there. So their mission set changes because it's an AFSOC mission versus a rescue. The rescue squadrons fall under Air Combat Command. So concentrating on rescue of downed pilot and personnel at a rescue squadron versus you still have that same mission set on the special tactics side, but you're a ground element also, not just working off fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft, but now you're also working on the ground with the ODA or actually you can also go to coalition and NATO forces also. But now I think they have combat weathermen, TAC-Ps, PJs, and combat controllers in a special tactics unit now, from what I'm aware. But it wasn't there when I was there.
So when did you retire?
I retired October of 14.
Okay. So you definitely still have a lot of the knowledge of a lot of fairly current events going on in the community. But so did you, of course, had tours in Iraq, Afghanistan?
Yeah, I did. I have a lot of tours, about six in each one of those. And then I've got about 17, 18 total deployments. Obviously some from my Navy days, but first Gulf War. But I've got the Iraq, Afghanistan, and some other places too.
Other places you can't talk about?
Just some places that I'd rather not mention on here.
Roger. I'm tracking. So let's see. Would you do it all again?
I would, yeah. It was a great career. I can't complain. Obviously, there's always sticking points. It's always people you're going to run into that may be underneath you or above you. Sure. That are challenging. That comes with the job and leadership challenges. But I had a great career. I don't. Yeah, I would definitely do it again. It's worth it.
And would you do anything differently?
The only thing I might do differently, and it has nothing to do with the career path I took, education probably.
Mhm.
I'd probably do the education earlier in my lifetime versus waiting till I'm later on in, a undergraduate degree, then a master's program, which is complete now. But when I first went in, I went in as a young guy in the military at 18 years old. But I definitely, and I know we all did the same thing. A lot of us did the education later on, but yeah, that would be the only thing that I would change out of my career path. The job itself was great. All of them, actually.
Mhm.
My duty stations were great. Some great people. Still talk to a lot of them, whether it be PJs, combat controllers, other career fields in the Air Force, but also in the SART community and the Marines. I still talk to a lot of guys.
So I've got to ask you a question. It has nothing to do with PJs, but did you ever know Staff Sergeant Ritchie?
Yeah, I know who he is. I've met him once, but
Oh God, that guy, man. Let me tell you a quick story on him. I know this is kind of getting off track, but it's fine. You'll appreciate it. So, in 90, I guess it was 95. I'd actually gotten out of the Navy for a very short stint, maybe 4 months, and came back in. And they put me in Great Lakes under their NAVVET program, so Navy Veteran Program. And so what had happened, that was during the very first government shutdown. So my orders, I was supposed to go back to Pendleton. Orders were canked and all that, and got stuck in Great Lakes. So I ended up being the LPO for one of the sick call teams on the recruit side of the house. And I'm going to lunch out to a McDonald's one day. And out of the corner of my eyes, I see this black guy walking, and he's got a Marine Corps all-weather coat. He's got a watch cap on. He's got a freaking woolly pulley and jeans. And I don't know, something just kind of piqued my interest about this guy. So I'm walking forward, and I heard, "Excuse me," and I just froze, right? I was like, there's only one dude in the world with that voice. And I turn around, and it's freaking Ritchie. I'm like, "What are you doing, man?" He's like, Doc, I'm driving a truck." So he ends up retiring. And did you ever know Raul Perez? I don't know if you knew him or not.
No, I don't think so.
He was a recon Marine that decided to get out and join the Navy. Just so happened to be going to the Corps School at the same time I was there. So, of course, Ritchie was in Alpha Company 3rd Recon at the time, or when we were all in Hawaii. So I go to Perez, and I said, "You never believe who I found." So we get Ritchie, and he's got this long, greasy ass, half dried out Jerry curl going on, right? Complete opposite of how he used to be. So we basically guilt him into shaving his head again and getting all moto. I'll have to send you a picture of it. It's pretty hilarious. But so this fool, I have to tell you the rest of the story offline because it's probably nothing for other folks to hear. But remind me before we hang up to tell you the rest of it.
I will.
So anyway, getting back to the important stuff, I guess. One of the gentlemen sent me a question, and he wants to know what was the greatest moment of your career.
Man, aside from entry and retirement,
Yeah, right.
yeah, something in the middle. Specific moment, or just some of the things I was able to do.
Yeah, maybe just some of the things you were able to do.
Man, I'll tell you what, I did this because, and I'm still in the medical community now. I work for federal organizations, but I like it because I still like to be able to help people. So I still like to be tactical, and you can view that statement how you want, but I still also like to be able to help people, whether it be people on my own team or other people. So, that's kind of one of the big things that interests me on the pararescue side was I still get to do that. I get to rescue people. And just the helping as a whole, I would say, is really cool, man. I mean, I loved it. I love the job on both sides. The other stuff and the camaraderie. when it comes down to it, that's one of the things I actually miss, the camaraderie. I have a little bit of it here where I'm at, but that's the main thing I miss is the camaraderie. What I don't miss is the the deal. Your military, they own you 24/7, 365. Now it's a lot more freedom. It's that's what I definitely don't. That's definitely what I'm okay with where I'm at now when it comes to that. But I miss the camaraderie.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. But so I know folks that are wanting to go this route. Do you have advice for them as far as training? As far as I know, it's been a minute since you've done it, but just as far as trying to train correctly and any diet advice or anything like that, or just train smart, basically.
To answer this, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and I'm not going to talk about millennials. But I will say that these days I've noticed a shift in people, in men, boys and men, and people in general. What I see most of is concentrate your efforts on the task at hand. As far as physical training, this is a tough program. The pararescue program is a tough program. They wouldn't necessarily put make movies about it, just like the SEAL training is the same. And if it wasn't the toughest thing that's out, one of the toughest things that's out there, if you're going to set your goals to that, train to that standard, train farther than that standard. If you're going to have to pass a 6 or 7 mile run or a 6 mile run in 42 minutes, then you need to train to an 8 and a 9 mile run in a 6 or 7 minute mile. Set your goals higher than what they're actually asking you to do. When you go into that pararescue pipeline or whatever pipeline you choose, if you choose one, your physical standards are huge. Your physical ability affects your mental ability. If you're not physically strong, that makes you mentally weak, or will tend to. You need both, but set those physical standards high. These days they have, when I first went in, they didn't have athletic trainers in the pipeline. They didn't have athletic trainers at the units when you got there. Now they have such a great complement of athletic trainers, and there's big funding push towards that now these days. So there's big funding push towards nutrition, athletic trainers, physical therapists, performance coaches, because they're different than athletic trainers. Sometimes they're combined, but usually they're different. The unit I came from. So do as much of that as you can. You can read a lot. You can research a lot more than I could when I was young. For me, it was just go in and suck it up, and I didn't have anybody training me. Now you guys can prepare for that. It makes it worthwhile to do that. If you don't, you're only setting yourself up for failure. Do as much as you can on your own. The rest is going to come. It's going to come with it. And if you fall to the wayside, you fall to the wayside. But if not, that physical ability, mental ability is huge.
Yeah, I think there's no video games in PJs.
No, not until you deploy.
Right.
But I'm not promoting his book, but there's a couple of great books out there. On Killing is one of them, and it talks about the mental differences between people in Vietnam and now. But it's a great book to read if you guys can read it. Read the differences, but there are some advantages to the video games with training your mind, but stay off your phones.
Yeah, it's definitely
stay off the video games as much as you can. Concentrate on what you're doing. Go outside, because that's where you're going to be for most of your career, if that's the career path you take. Most of your job is outside until later on in your career, and then you have to sit inside. But especially your first, I would say 10 to 15 years It's outside. Get outside, experience things. Instead of looking at your phone or playing video games, go hiking, go running. All those things will benefit you down the road if this is the job you decide to choose.
Yeah, I think that most of the folks that want to go down this route kind of probably already have that in the back of the head, knowing that. And I have a feeling, of course, I don't know for certain, but I just had that feeling that these guys are not the average, I want to sit down and play video games all weekend kind of guys. But
that's great.
But so hopefully that will help folks out. But so can you tell us any exciting in-country stories that don't violate anything, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know,
throw these guys a bone, give them some motivation.
That's a hard one there.
I bet.
There's so much stuff that I could probably pull from. I would say, if you want a motivating story, some things that have happened, let's just say you're out in open ocean and you're moving around on a boat, and I can't tell the full story, but I can tell you parts of it. And there's a guy that falls off of another boat in the water, and of course I'm being very vague here, so I'm not making it very motivating. But just think about that guy that you just pulled out of the water, and which is it's happened to a lot of us, but happened to me also. You pulled this guy out of the water, who was face down in a dry suit, and the air went to the end of his dry suit. So it's forcing his face to be underwater after he fell about 30 feet from a ship after trying to climb a ship. You pull him out of the water. He's not breathing. He's got no pulse. Doesn't speak English, even if he was breathing and had a pulse. And, just think about that realm, that little, what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So a little motivation is and I had help here, so it wasn't just me, but we pull the guy out of the water, do CPR on him, we get him breathing again, and we get a pulse back on him after we get a pulse, we get him breathing again. And he doesn't know where he's at, so his alert and orientation is not there. Eventually he gets to where he knows who he is, doesn't know what happened to him, doesn't know what's going on. So he's got a possible head injury, doesn't know where he's at or what's going on. He's got multiple broken ribs. He's got bilateral rise and fall. He's got a unilateral rise and fall of the chest. Because it's so painful for him to breathe from the other side because of the broken ribs. And here you are, you're in open ocean and you're floating around. It's cold, it's raining, and you're treating this guy. So motivation is to get you going a little bit. He ended up living, but all the treatments that you did, I guess we could segue back into one of your other questions that you asked before was, hey, what was your greatest moment? This is one of them, one of the greatest moments that you're able to actually do something like this in such a difficult environment, bring that guy back, save his life, and then get him to fly him to a hospital when a helicopter finally showed up to pluck us from the water, because I was actually part of the ground assault troop for that on the boat. So to be able to take that guy, jump on board a Coast Guard aircraft, take him to a hospital, and for that guy to live with severe injuries, possible head injury, what we call a flail chest, a pneumohemothorax, and a couple of broken bones. For that guy to survive and also going hypothermic. So it's a pretty big deal. It's kind of motivating, get you going.
That's good shit.
You're actually able to do that, to save that guy's life. It gives you a little bit of, kind of gives yourself a pat on the back, but also gives you some, hey, I can do this. This is doable. Not every situation is going to end up being like that. You're going to lose some, and you're going to save a lot. But that's your goal, is to save a lot. But, I don't know how to make it motivating for them, but I can just tell you that those stories are out there, and those things are going to happen to you, and you're going to feel good about yourself whenever you're able to do it, and you're going to feel bad about yourself whenever you're not able to save those people. But that's why you're here. Not everything is about. You're not always going to save the world, even though that's what you want to do.
Right. Not everything has a happy ending, basically.
Yeah, not everything has a happy ending, unfortunately.
Do you guys do you carry ACLS type gear in your kit or no?
You do.
Okay.
You do. I do now. I had the availability there, depending on where you're working at, whether you're working off of a helicopter platform or a fixed wing, rotary wing or fixed wing platform.
Mm-hmm.
You can have more, but most of the time the guys are carrying on their back what they can operate with.
Right.
And you know the deal with the ACLS, advanced cardiac life support meds, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last thing you're going to bring. You have your ability to do CPR and some advanced training and medical training for procedures, but
yeah, I mean, you're not going to be running
carrying that stuff on your back. You have the ability to get access to it, but not on your back, so you may not have it there with you.
Yeah, you're not going to run a full code in a tactical environment. So
no, you're not. Some of the guys and they're really good skills. PJs have really gone up, increased their skills over the years, and especially the rescue guys with the both, but the rescue guys with the ACLS capability on board the aircraft, on board a rotary wing aircraft and fixed wing. So they have those abilities, but they're still prepared to run from those helicopters and go get somebody, and if possible, bring them back to that helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
So if they get off that aircraft, unless they're staying for a long time, they're usually not carrying that stuff. And I always talk about the rescue guys, and I always talk about the special tactics guys, and I mainly have been talking about the active duty guys, but man, there's so many the Guard and Reserve teams that are out there in the Air Force that have a full complement of people, of PJs and support personnel all the time. And those guys are supporting everything from NASA shuttle launches to they're sending them out there, and those guys are parachuting into open ocean and getting on board little ships and little boats that have people that are injured and burnt. And, those guys are saving those people's lives and taking care of them until they can get close enough in where an air asset or another boat can get to them and pluck them out of the water or pull them up on the other ship for follow-on care. So there's some really, really good Guard and Reserve guys. Man, they're great also. They do a lot of really cool stuff. I've always been impressed by the Alaska guys. Kind of jealous, actually, because they get to do some really cool stuff. And we used to send people up there to train with them, to do a rotation with them. Those guys are pulling rotations up at base camp. And man, they're high-altitude experts. And then the guys on the West Coast, down around Moffett, open ocean, they go out further. The Coast Guard can only go out so far.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are going out or have in the past parachuted in for burn victims on ships and took care of them until they could get more supplies for days. So they have a great capability. And don't let them fool you. Those guys also rotate in and out of combat zones. They just don't hang out in the U.S. and do rescues in the U.S. They actually deploy overseas also. So the Guard and Reserves are great. If you're not looking to do full-time active duty, those Guard and Reserve guys, it's a great job to have. maintain your skills. You still get to deploy when you want to, and unbelievable set of guys.
Well, listen, man, we've been talking for probably a good 45 minutes now at least, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge. And I know the gentleman that requested this will appreciate it as well. And again, thank you so much for your service, because I know you're a stud, even though you're old now. Wait, did I say that out loud? I did, didn't I?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I'm glad you're still in. I'm glad you're still serving. 2
more years, brother. That's all I can do. 2 more. That's if I make it and not choke somebody out. But we won't talk about that. But listen, let me let's wrap this up. Any last words of encouragement or wisdom you'd like to throw out before we do? And
no, sir. Just maybe one comment: stay focused. Set your goal and attain your goal, and don't quit. No matter what, don't quit. You may not be physically or mentally where you need to be, but if you have heart's going to pull you over the top.
There you go. Don't quit. They don't teach that, and they sure as hell don't issue that in a sea bag. Heart. Yeah, either have it or you don't.
I've seen guys selected. They didn't quite meet. They met the basic standards, the requirements, but they were the weakest of the bunch. But that guy, I would choose him over other guys, because that guy, he's never going to quit on you. He's got a heart.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. All right, brother. Let's wrap this up. Hey, listen, greatly appreciate you coming on, and hang tight. We'll talk offline.
Yeah, easy day. Good luck, fellas.
You've been listening to Nothing's Off the Table, the podcast where no subject is too taboo to discuss. Find us on iTunes, Facebook, and on Instagram. Nothing's Off the Table is a Mad Sis Productions podcast.